Hi all, Hare Krishna, Namaste. We still have 2 minutes to go, so we will wait until others join and then start. Good evening, sorry. Hare Krishna, can someone please confirm if you all can see my screen? Thanks for letting me know, Indumati. I was just on mute, sorry. Okay, perfect. Thanks. So we'll start today's session exactly at 5. We have a few seconds to go. And I just want to urge all of you to attempt the quizzes. I see only 7 or 8 people attempting quizzes. Sincerely, the rest of you are just on and off. So make sure that you attend the quizzes. Okay, it really improves the understanding. Okay, so it's time. We're going to start today's session. Like always, before I begin, I request for all of your prayers and blessings so that whatever I may speak may be in accordance with what was told by Lord Krishna to Arjuna and what was passed down through the Guru Parampara. Please join me in this prayer. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utpadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. Okay, so this session is dedicated to the founder Acharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Right. So in the last chapter, of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, last week, we studied about Karma Sannyasa Yoga, right? We saw, how we can stay in this world. Who are the 3 doers, right? Ishvara, Jiva, and Prakriti, right? Soul, super soul, and material nature. We saw what's equal vision. How do we have this equal vision of seeing the presence of Paramatma in all living entities? Seeing the presence of God as Paramatma in all living entities. That's equal vision. And we saw what is peace formula, right? So which is specifically the 29th shloka of the 5th chapter, where everything that we perform, the real person that enjoys the results of those activities is God. So realizing this, understanding that we are really not the enjoyers, we get the peace. It's called peace formula, right? Okay. That was a recap of the last session. Today we're going to study or address a very important question that Arjuna asks Lord Krishna on how to control the mind, right? What is the mind really? Is it an enemy or friend? And what different types of approaches can we have to control the mind? Okay. And then what happens when the mind becomes steady? How do we deal with success and failure? And then who is a yogi? So this is what we're going to see in this chapter, which is called Dhyana Yoga. Okay. Dhyana essentially means meditation. Okay. And it's a form of yoga. We'll see what Lord Krishna instructs Arjuna in this chapter. So the abbreviation for this chapter is easy. Okay. So to begin with, I have a small question for you all. What do you think? Is it easy to control the mind? How easy is it to control the mind? How easy is it for us to control the mind? Is it easy, difficult, very difficult, or impossible? What do you think? If you can all put it in the chat box. Okay, Hare Krishna, Prashant. Pranav says it's near impossible. Okay. Okay. Kumar ji, hello. Okay, yeah, it's not easy at all. Indumati ji says very difficult. Priya says it depends on the situation. Okay. Okay, interesting. Okay. I think iPhone, this is Lalita auntie. She says it's difficult. Okay, right. So, yeah, each of us have a different take. So we need to understand the significance and fantastic capabilities of the mind. Hare Krishna. Yes, definitely. Perfect. So if you ask me, is it easy to control the mind? I would say no, not at all. Okay. Not at all easy. It's very difficult. Prashant says, especially if you want to concentrate in a boring lecture. Yeah. So especially when you want your mind to focus on something, that's exactly when it becomes the most rebellious, isn't it? It's very difficult. I personally agree. And, the same thing Arjuna tells Lord Krishna. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. Meaning the mind is so rebellious, so, keeps moving so fast. It's so difficult to control the mind. It's almost as if we are trying to capture the blowing wind. It's as difficult as that. This is what Arjuna, tells Arjuna, who was, among the greatest warriors, who had extremely perfect focus. And if he picked up his Gandiva bow and he focused on a particular point, target, it would hit exactly the bull's eye. That was Arjuna's focus. And imagine Arjuna saying this, that he's comparing the mind to the wind. It moves with the speed of wind, and it's extremely difficult to control the mind. So we'll see how Lord Krishna addresses this question on how to control the mind. Oops. Okay, just give me a second. Right. So what do you think? Is the mind our enemy or our friend? I'd like to see your answers in the chat box, please. Is the mind our enemy or our friend? Can be both. Okay. Friend. All right. Can be both. Okay. You all think it can be both. Right. Okay. Kiranji says both. Okay. Correct. You're all perfectly right. The mind can either be an enemy or a friend, because essentially the person who is responsible for the mind and its activities is us. Okay, so let's see when the mind can be an enemy and when it can be a friend, right? So what does Lord Krishna says about this? Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitaha anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. What this translates to: for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to conquer the mind, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Okay. Why? Why is this so? So a person who has effective control over his mind, sorry for that, yes. The mind is a very good friend because you want to focus on a task and you direct the mind that you concentrate on this task for this much time, and your mind follows the directions that you give it, right? It's very useful to make progressive and healthy choices, right? So we all have this habit of procrastinating when we have some task to do, especially while we're students and maybe even otherwise. And we have so many distractions that prevent us from focusing. When we are able to control the mind, we can make healthy choices over these distractions, right? We become detached from sense gratification. Instead of, for example, you know that junk food is not very good for health, right? And having green vegetables, 5 in a day, that's promoted here in Scotland, at least 5 vegetables a day. That's a better choice for your body. But still, you feel that junk food is very tasty, and our mind tends to run towards those kinds of food, towards sense gratification, towards feeling better for a while instead of focusing on the actual betterment or health. So if your mind is your friend, you're able to successfully control yourself from such cravings, okay? And we become detached from sense gratification. What's the result of all of this, of having your mind as your best friend? The result is freedom from slavery towards your own mind and elevation in whatever endeavors that you're doing, right? But when is the mind your enemy? When the mind takes charge of you, we are the masters of the mind and not the mind our masters, okay? But most of the time it's the other way around. I apologize for the slides. Yeah. Most of the time it's the other way around. We'll see why, okay? We'll see a nice example. But when the mind is the enemy, it becomes our master. It tends to pull us towards its own desires, follow sinful desires like lust, anger, and greed, okay, which do not really help in the long run. Most of the time we feel irritated, agitated. A lot of times we feel misguided and lost, right? We're attached to sense gratification, unable to control ourselves, always resorting to junk food and all kinds of distraction, be it Netflix, social media, or anything of that sort. What happens? We go on procrastinating and we try to escape from the duties and responsibilities that we have, right? The result of all of this is we further get degraded. We're not able to progress. We get degraded and entangled in this whole web, right? So this is the result of the mind being enemy. So the mind, like you all said, can be a friend or enemy. It's both. It is in our hands to make it either. So there's a beautiful example description in this picture that you can see. So this is this elephant, okay, and a person who is controlling the elephant, and then you have the passengers who are sitting. So we as a soul are like passengers. Now you tell me, where should the elephant go? Should the elephant go to a place that the passenger wants to reach? Should the elephant go to a place that the driver, takes it to? Or the elephant should do as it likes, There's a driver and a passenger, but the elephant decides to go as it likes. Now, who decides the destination? Does the passenger decide? Does the driver decide? Or the elephant itself decides? Who decides the destination? Can I please have your responses in the chat box? Okay, Sai Krishna says mind. Priya says the passenger decides the destination. Right. Kumarji, Pranav, right. You're all correct. So, yes, Prashant, the passenger instructs the driver, right, to take the elephant to the destination. Perfect, Prashant. So, right, you're all correct in saying that the passenger is the one who should be able to decide the destination, isn't it? But what is our case most of the times? It's like riding on a mad elephant, right? The elephant goes wherever it likes, and we feel like we are in some chaos and confusion. We don't know what's happening, just following, just sitting helplessly. That's not the case. The real master here is the passenger, right? So we as a soul are like passengers, and these senses that we have, be it our eyes, ears, nose, taste, and touch. The senses that we have are like the elephant itself. Senses are always in hankering for sense objects, right? The eyes want to see something, the ears want to hear something, the tongue always wants to keep talking or tasting something, right? They're all behind sense objects. But who has control over this, over the senses? Who has control over the senses? Sorry. It is the driver who directs where the elephant should go. So the driver has control over the senses, and the driver represents the mind. But who directs the mind and its activities? It is the soul. Okay? It's the passenger, or it's the soul who directs the mind and its activities, isn't it? So how do we take charge now? Everything is chaotic. The mad elephant is running somewhere. The driver does not know what he is doing. And we are aboard this chaotic ride. How to set things right? What can we do to control the mind? How can we get control over the driver so that the elephant takes us to our desired destination, right? So one of the processes recommended in the Vedic system and also expounded in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Shri Krishna is called Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, and this process is discussed from the 10th to 36th shloka of the 6th chapter. So, what is Ashtanga Yoga? What is Ashtanga Yoga? Is it some kind of paranormal experience? Is it a physical experience? Is it gymnastics? Or is it austerity of the body? What do you all think? What is your understanding of Ashtanga Yoga? Have you heard of this before? Okay, something related to the chakras. Okay, Sai Krishna says. Pranav says all. Okay, it's paranormal development, physical exercise, gymnastics. Okay, austerity of the body. Prashant says it's meditation. Okay. So we have so many people having different opinions on what is Ashtanga Yoga and what is yoga in general. Okay. You'll see yoga for blood pressure, desktop for yoga, yoga for cancer. So many books have been written. But is this in accordance with what we learn about the real Ashtanga Yoga in the Bhagavad Gita? The answer is no. So Ashtanga, Ashta means 8 in Sanskrit. Okay, Ashta means 8. And Ashtanga means it has a type of yoga system which has 8 components. Is called Ashtanga Yoga. And let's see what are those 8 components. All right. So that it's an 8-step process, and that's why it's called Ashtanga Yoga. So what are the components in Ashtanga Yoga? You have Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Yoga essentially means connection or union. I already told you before, right? So the ultimate goal of this yoga is connection or union. Connection with whom? Union with whom? Union with God, who is present as Paramatma in our hearts. Understanding his presence, realizing his presence, and establishing a connection with him is called the Samadhi or union, right? But to get to that point of yoga, you have to first go through the entire cycle of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and then you come to samadhi. So let's see what are the requirements for each of these steps in Ashtanga Yoga. Okay. First of all, yama and niyama are the rules, okay, that we have to follow. Okay. So what are the do's in this Ashtanga Yoga? What are the don'ts? What we have to avoid, what we have to practice. Okay. So in the yamas, we have to always be honest, follow truthfulness. There is ahimsa, non-violence. Okay. There is celibacy. Okay. And in niyama again, you have to avoid all kinds of greed, lustful activities, lying, these kind of things. In niyamas, you have these. Asana is posture. Okay, there are different postures in the Hatha Yoga system, which is the physical aspect. Okay, it's one of the components of Ashtanga Yoga. It's not yoga itself. It's not Ashtanga Yoga itself. The postures that we practice is just one of the components called asana. So we are required to sit in a particular posture focused for several hours. That's one of the requirements. Okay. And then you progress towards pranayama, wherein we control our breathing pattern, consciously control the breathing. Okay. And then after practicing this pranayama for several years, hours, depends individually. Okay. You can end up in a very crucial stage called pratyahara, where you're able to establish control over your senses. Okay. Once all your senses are under control, then it is possible to fix your mind at a particular thought, okay, or a particular thing that you wish to focus it on, okay, for several hours as per your desire or interest. Okay, so that is called dharana. Dhyana, when you are able to completely focus unflinchingly, unwaveringly on Vishnu or Paramatma in your heart, that is called Dhyana. And finally, you get complete absorption called Samadhi, or union, or establish a connection with that Paramatma. But let's see, what are the further requirements? Is it possible for anyone to do this Ashtanga Yoga practice? Sorry, just a second. Is it possible for anyone and everyone to do this Ashtanga Yoga practice? Let us see. We saw all these 8 steps of Ashtanga Yoga. One has to have an unagitated mind, okay? No material desire should be there for you to do this. You have to, we are required to leave the normal material life, go to a secluded place, sit in a place where there is no distraction, close your eyes, sit in a specific posture for several hours, okay? And practice complete celibacy. It is like how a lamp that never dwindles in the wind should not be like that. A lamp that is steady and focused. That is how our mind focus should be. All the habits should be regulated. Do you think this is practical and possible in today's time? Is this practical? Yes or no? Can I please have your responses? Sai Krishna has a very interesting question. So I'll come to that, hopefully at the end of today's session, okay? Yes. In order for us to follow these, okay, Indumati ji says, yes, it's possible if we practice, okay? It's absolutely possible. Sai Krishna also says, right. But some of us says no. So at this point in time, letting go of, it might seem like it's a possibility, letting go of all your family responsibilities, letting go of your, duties, finding a secluded place, staying there for years together. So this might not be entirely practical, okay? It is very difficult for us to sit in a position for just 5 minutes, isn't it? In a particular position, just 5 minutes, completely focused on something. If you close your eyes, you'll constantly feel thousands of things distracting your mind, your own thoughts, isn't it? So it's not a very easy process. Sometimes if you think of it, it's not very practical as well. So what does Lord what does Arjuna say? This shloka is what I quoted. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayo riva sudushkaram. Sorry, just a second. Yeah. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and it's very strong. If you try to control it, it resists so strongly, right? Oh Krishna. And to subdue this mind, I think it's more difficult than trying to control the wind. This is what Arjuna says in the 34th shloka. So, how to control the mind? That is through, one of the methods is through Ashtanga Yoga, which I just mentioned. Okay. But Ashtanga Yoga is not a very easy process. Okay. It requires a lot of commitment. You go to a secluded place, try to control your mind. It can take several years, okay, to reach the ultimate point of samadhi. It can take not just several years, but several lifetimes to reach the point of samadhi. So what to do? What happens? If a person practices Ashtanga Yoga, but he fails to achieve samadhi or the ultimate goal of Ashtanga Yoga, what happens to such a person, such a yogi who has tried, who reached up to a certain point in the 8 steps, but then became unsuccessful, couldn't reach the point of samadhi? What happens to them? What's the fate? Here, Lord Krishna gives an assurance, right? Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati samaha shuchinam shrimatam gehe yoga bhrashto bhijayate. The 41st shloka, Lord Krishna says the unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Okay. So, a yogi who is unsuccessful will enjoy merits of the yoga practice that he has done in planets of good living entities, pious living entities, and he is born back into this earth, into a good family, into a rich family or a righteous family, so that he gets all the opportunity and the luxury to further practice yoga. Like I said, this knowledge, the spiritual knowledge, is unlike what degrees we get or what kind of knowledge we get in this material world. Because if we, in this lifetime, if I've studied until 12th grade, it's not possible that I'll start from university in my next lifetime, right? But in spiritual knowledge, it is not the case. Okay. If I have progressed until a certain stage in my spiritual advancement in this lifetime, this knowledge will come with me in my progressive lifetimes, and I will start progressively, subsequently from the next steps. Okay. It's like after 10th grade, I will start from 11th grade in spiritual knowledge from my next life. Okay. It's like that. So similarly, Lord Krishna assures that yogis will also get this opportunity to continue their yoga sadhana or their practice over further progressive lifetimes until they reach the goal of samadhi, right? So that basically they will be given all the opportunity and luxury to practice yoga, right? So what is the best? In the previous chapters, we saw karma yoga. Before that, we saw something called, the second chapter is called Sankhya yoga, which is basically through mental speculation. You try to, it's like a hit and trial method. Okay, you see, is this correct? Is this incorrect? You get an answer. Okay, is this correct? Is this incorrect? So that it goes on and goes on until you reach the truth. So that is mental speculative method called Sankhya yoga. We saw, or Buddhi yoga. Then we saw Karma yoga. And then we have today Dhyana yoga. So among what is all been discussed, okay, which is the best? Okay, what is the best way? A yogi is greater than an ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than a fruitative worker. O Arjuna, in all circumstances, therefore, be a yogi. This is what Lord Krishna instructs to Arjuna. Okay, a yogi is greater than an ascetic. An ascetic is a one who practices Dhyana yoga, meditative principles. Okay, greater than an empiricist. Empiricist is a person who practices Sankhya yoga, mental speculation. Okay, Whether God exists or not, he tries to find an answer. Okay, this itself can take several lifetimes. Then he progresses towards other question. Where does God exist? What is his form? Does he have a form? Does he not have a form? That's an empiricist. Okay, question, hit and trial, yes or no questions, and eventually coming to the answer. So a yogi is greater than an ascetic, is greater than an empiricist, and is greater than the fruitative worker. Fruitative worker is a person who performs karma yoga. Right. What is karma yoga? Can someone tell me in the chat box? We have discussed at length about this in the previous meetings, previous sessions. What is karma yoga? Yes? Can I have your responses, please? Prashant, Priya, what is karma yoga? Is it just working, performing activities so that we get some results? Is that karma yoga? Karma yoga is control over the daily deeds. Sai Krishna ji says, okay. Right. So karma yoga means, yoga means a union with God, right? Establishing a connection with God. So karma yoga is when we work, we perform activities, but we dedicate those activities and the results of those activities as offerings to God. Okay, that is when it becomes karma yoga, right? So what does Lord Krishna mean by a yogi here? A yogi is greater than an ascetic, greater than the empiricist, greater than the fruitative worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. A yogi is a person who strives for union with God and association with God. Okay. So the easiest and best way recommended for this yuga, okay, this Kali Yuga, people used to perform thousands of years of dhyana, meditation and penance during the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, okay, even Dwapara Yuga, the previous yugas in the time cycle, which have passed already. In the Kali Yuga, the mind is very fickle. It keeps wavering. It's very difficult to control the mind and sit in a specific posture for several hours. It's very difficult. So what's the easiest way? What does Lord Krishna mean when he says be a yogi? So if you look at this yoga ladder, okay, you will discover this as we progress through the Bhagavad Gita. Now we have seen Karma Yoga, we have seen Jnana Yoga, okay, Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. Then we have seen Ashtanga Yoga in today's chapter. In the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and as we progress towards the 12th chapter, we will see what is Bhakti, which is the topmost among the yoga systems that we have, okay? And all these yoga systems eventually help us control the mind and establish an association or connection with God, okay? So if you look at the yoga ladder, all types of yoga eventually lead to Bhakti Yoga or devotional practice, okay? So Bhakti means, we saw one of the components of Bhakti is surrender. We completely surrender to a spiritual master, to God. Okay, spiritual master is considered to be a representative of God, okay, sent by God. Spiritual masters who come in this Guru Parampara system or disciplic succession of Guru Shishya. These spiritual masters are considered to be bona fide representatives of God himself. So when we surrender to the spiritual master and do our activities in accordance with his instructions, we progress towards devotional service or Bhakti Yoga. And this is the topmost yoga system. It is recommended by Lord Krishna. We will further see this in the 12th chapter as well. Okay. So, and of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service, okay, to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and he is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So among all types of yogis, among ascetics, karma yogis, among, jnana yogis, who is the best? Lord Krishna says, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, renders loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me. So this is the 47th shloka of the 6th chapter. So essentially, in Bhakti Yoga, what we strive to develop is love towards God, unconditional love towards God. So when we develop this, we constantly think of God. When you're in love with someone, whether you like it or not, you constantly think of them, right? Constantly think of whether they would like this activity, how would they respond, isn't it? So when you develop this unconditional love towards God, that's when you develop this great faith, think of God in all activities, desire to do some service to God. If you eat something, you feel like you offer it to God first and then eat it. If you buy new clothes, you feel like you first show it to God, okay? First offer it to God and then accept it yourself. So this is devotional service or unconditional love towards God, or it's also called Bhakti Yoga. And Lord says that such Bhakti Yogis are most intimately united with me and believed to be the highest of all in the opinion of Lord Krishna himself, right? So this is the overview of today's chapter, okay? Dhyana Yoga. This 6th chapter focuses completely on Dhyana or meditative practice to control the mind, okay? But for this particular yuga, for the Kali Yuga, it is not entirely recommended because this yuga, it's very difficult to control the mind, sit in a specific posture for several hours, okay? So it may be a different case for everybody. So that is why in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has given us so many different ways, depending on our individual capabilities. We can choose the path that we desire to follow. For the Kali Yuga, Bhakti Yoga is the most recommended and topmost yoga system. Eventually, all other yoga practices and yoga systems, Dhyana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, will all lead towards Bhakti Yoga, right? Karma Yoga will lead towards Bhakti Yoga. So we saw in today's chapter, is the mind an enemy or friend? Okay. If the mind acts as an enemy, how does it behave? If the mind acts as a friend, how does it behave? Right? What is Ashtanga Yoga? There are 8 components, 8 limbs. And is it practical? And what happens to a yogi who has not been successful in attaining samadhi? If a yogi fails, what is the fate? What happens? What does he get? There, Lord Krishna assured us that they will get ample opportunities to continue the yoga sadhana in further lifetimes until they are successful, right? And among all the yoga systems, among all the paths available, which is the easiest and the best one, right? So this is the overview of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Abbreviation is easy. It's a very interesting chapter. If you do get time, you can go read the purports and translations of the shlokas here. There is a reference to equal vision in this chapter as well. In the 30th shloka, it's one of my favorite shlokas, 6.30. Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. So Lord Krishna says, a person who is able to see my presence in everyone and everywhere is always united with me. Is always in my remembrance and I am always in his remembrance, right? So that's a beautiful shloka in this chapter, right? So I am going to end here with thanking you all for kindly listening to this lecture, okay? And end with the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Please join back. The meeting is about to end and we'll have our quiz and Q&A. Okay, right. You can all join back to the same link. Okay, be completely involved. I'll take your questions in the coming meeting, right?